Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk to you about how I am writing my novel around my full-time business. Now, I get this question quite a lot, especially since I've started on TikTok. People have been saying, oh, how do you find time to write? How do you get so motivated after a full day of work, etc. And I think it's not been an easy road, to be honest, to get to where I am at the moment, which I would say at the moment I am the most motivated to get my novel finished that I've ever been. And I think it's taken a lot of kind of work and understanding of how I create best to get me to a stage where I am now, which is really focused on getting this bloody novel finished. So it's Saturday the 2nd of September today, and it's the beginning of a new month. And I have spent the most of August, and actually I've spent the last month of August really focusing on trying to do as much writing as possible to get me a little bit closer to finishing my novel. So I wanted to talk about kind of how this last month has gone, what I've been doing to get myself closer to my writing goal, which is finishing the first draft of my novel, and why I'm doing it. So that hopefully, if you are also trying to get to the end of your first novel, or your second novel or third novel, but hopefully this video either makes you feel less alone if you're going through something similar, if you're struggling yourself with motivation, and hopefully it gives you a few tips and tricks and that kind of thing. But either way, I'm gonna talk about my experience and what I've been doing over the last month to move me closer towards my goal of finishing my first fiction novel. So the first section is about why am I even bothering to write a fiction novel? I've got 2 non-fiction books under my belt. Why am I bothering? And the thing is with me is that writing isn't so much something that I see as a choice of career. It's just something that I've always been compelled to do. I've been writing ever since I was a little girl. For as long as I can remember, I've been writing stories. I used to staple bits of paper together, fold bits of paper in half, staple them into like a book, and then literally write a book. I'd put a title on the front cover, and I've been doing that since I was like kind of 7 or 8. And so it's always been something that I've wanted to do. When I was in my teens, I wrote World War II fiction. It was like World War II romance fiction. It was terrible. I was basically just ripping off my favourite books. And then as I've got older, the ideas constantly flow. I've constantly got ideas coming into my mind. So yeah, it's one of those things. I will never not be doing it. It makes me happy. It really makes me feel like I'm doing something that I was meant to do. So I can't not. The other thing you might be asking is, well, what about your third non-fiction book? Weren't you writing that at one point? Yes, and I still am writing my third non-fiction book. It's about widows in country houses, but for various different reasons I don't really have the time to go into now, I have needed to really slow that project down. I need to take more time over it, and it's going to be a little bit different to book 1 and book 2. They very much featured on long case studies on, I think book 1 was on 3 women, book 4 was on 2... No, book 1 was on 3 women, book 2 was on 4 women, whereas this one in book 3, it's probably going to be more of a collection of kind of 10, 15, maybe even 20 women. So I obviously need a lot more time to do that, and it needs a lot more research. So basically it is still going, but I've popped that one on the side just for now. As soon as the first draft of the novel is finished, I will need a break from that for a while. So I will go back into the non-fiction. And while I'm researching and writing the non-fiction, I will be editing the first draft of my novel. So that's the plan if you're wondering kind of where the non-fiction is and what's happening next with that kind of thing. The other thing you might be wondering is, why am I bothering when I run a marketing company and I could just work full time in marketing and earn probably a lot more than I earn as through writing as a writer. And the thing is, the first half of this year was really, really busy with my business, with my marketing business. I was working pretty much full-time hours in marketing, and consequently I was so rushed off my feet that I didn't do any creative work. I was doing some of the work on the non-fiction book, but I finished working on the non-fiction at the end of February. So January, February, March, April and May were so incredibly busy with marketing that I didn't have any time to do any creative work. I didn't work on my novel, and by the end of May I was so burnt out, both from working kind of really long hours, but also just from a lack of creativity. And marketing is creative, and I do really love working in my business, in my marketing business. But what I did realise this year, kind of in the early summer, is that I don't think I can ever be in a position where I can just do marketing full time and not write. For me, it's going to have to be a balance for my mental health, for my creativity, for my general happiness. I need to find a balance between marketing and writing. And at the moment, writing doesn't really bring me in hardly any money. So the marketing business supports me financially. I have a family, I have a home that I need to contribute towards financially. And so therefore, I have to keep doing the marketing. I want to keep doing the marketing at the moment, but I can't do the marketing full time forever. I can't, it's not for me. So the other thing is, why don't I just write full time? If I know that I want to be a writer, why don't I just write full time? Why am I messing around with a marketing business when I could be writing full time and finish my novel a lot faster? And the reason for that is purely and simply, it comes down to finances. I can't afford to write full time. And so at the moment, I'm not in a position, the writing doesn't earn me enough on a regular monthly basis to be able to write full time. However, that is the goal. That is the long-term goal. I'm hoping that in some point in the near future, I'll be able to reduce even more the amount of marketing work that I'm doing and write more. And eventually I would like to be a full-time writer. That will make me quite sad because I do love the marketing work that I do, especially some of my clients that I've had in the last 12 months. So never say never. I might be sat here age 50 saying, well, you know, I'm still doing my bit of marketing because I really enjoy doing it, but most of my week, most of my time is spent writing. And I hope that I get to that point. I hope I get to a point where I can choose which one I want to do. At the moment, it definitely is skewed more towards I have to prioritise the paid work. And I slot my writing, my creativity, my YouTube time in on evenings, weekends, and if I'm having a quiet period, which I've had this summer, I can slot it in during the week as well. So with all of that, then, thinking about kind of my history, about why I write, about why I want to write, and the kind of experience this year of not writing and finding out how that impacted me, that's made me more determined than ever now to get my novel finished and to try and see if I can get it published. Because of course, finishing a novel and having it ready to go to an agent doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get published. We all hope it will, but that's another journey that I will go on to. But now I feel very determined. I felt very determined all summer. I still feel very determined now. We're going into autumn and I will get this finished. And hopefully I'll get it finished quite soon so that I can start editing it and getting it hopefully out there for you guys to read. So I'm going to go on to now, what have I done? How have I got to this space where I've spent the summer writing, and what are my next plans? So the first thing I'm going to do is tell you how many words I've written in August. And throughout the month of August, I have written 25,000 words. Now, for some people, that's going to be huge, a huge number. And for some people, 25,000 words is probably not going to be anywhere near a large number. And that's because everybody writes at their own speed. For me, bearing in mind that I've been working, I've been doing this on evenings, on weekends, and bearing in mind that I've been kind of plotting alongside, I am so thrilled that I've written 25,000 words. And it's really helped me jump ahead in terms of my narrative. So I wrote those 25,000 words, to be honest, mostly through the month of August, because I knew August was going to be my quietest month in terms of client work. And even with having a little bit more flexibility during the day, I did find that actually I didn't necessarily always write during the day. But we'll come on to that in a minute. So how did I get these 25,000 words down, and what have I learnt throughout the last month? Well, I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that actually I really enjoy writing at night. And maybe it's because I'm writing a gothic novel. Maybe it's because it's set on a windswept, I was going to say moorland, it's not on a moorland, a windswept coastline. And maybe because it's got elements of like a gothic ghost story. I like to be in the dark. I like to feel like I'm cosy, I'm enclosed. There's just something about nighttime writing that feels really, really creative to me. And so that's what I've been doing. I've been kind of leaning into it. I've been allowing myself to kind of move with my own kind of preferences of when I write. And it does eat into quality time with my family. Obviously, normally I'd be sat downstairs between 7 and 10 doing some cross stitch, watching some telly. But for me, I found that by identifying that this is my creative time, I really have decided that I'm going to prioritise it in order to give myself the best chance of success with the novel. So following on from that, One thing that I am making sure that I do is only write on weekday evenings. And that's because I am aware that writing from 7 to 10 in the evening does cut into family time. And so therefore I want to give myself the weekends to spend time with my family, to be able to get away from the computer, to go out for walks, spend time with friends, and just generally get a little bit of a break from the writing. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing to take away from that is you've got to do what works right for you. And I found that by having a break on Saturday and Sunday, when I come back to writing on the Monday, I'm almost eager to start. I'm excited. I've been thinking about kind of what's coming next and what I've written. I'm kind of mulling that story over in my head. And so by the time it comes to Monday evening to start writing again, I'm ready to go. And again, following on from this, is that I'm actually plotting now. I'm actually plotting what happens. So I'm plotting the storyline. So I have basically got 3 historic storylines in my novel. I've got a modern day, which is kind of around roughly 2008. And then I've got a historical narrative from the early 1900s up towards kind of World War II. And then I've got a narrative from 1790s, so the late 18th century. And so one of the things that I've been doing is I've been plotting all of those storylines. So I'd got to a point in the book where the modern day character Laura was discovering these historical stories of the other 2 characters. And I think one of the things I was really stumbling upon was the fact that how can I have Laura discover these 2 people's characters and their stories when I didn't know what their stories were? So what I did was I flipped it around. I plotted out the 2 historical characters. The 1790s character is called Rab, and I plotted his story. I wrote it all out in bullet points. I kind of plotted the main kind of story of his life. And then I did the same for the early 20th century character who's called Elsie. I plotted out her story as well. And so then when it came to actually starting at the beginning of August, I was like, right, I know what Rab's story is. I know what's going to happen. I can just sit down and basically go bullet point to bullet point, just writing out the story in full sentences and paragraphs and this, that and the other, and following the story. And some things changed and I added a few things in because I got inspired and this, that and the other. But roughly it kept me so focused because I knew what was happening and I also knew what always happened next or what I needed to write next. So that was a big tip that I got from... Where did I get it from? Was it on the Writer's Routine or was it at Huddersfield Literature Festival? Somebody said that they always finish writing knowing what's coming, what they need to write next. They never kind of get to the end and think, get to end of a chapter or get to an end of a section and think, oh, right, I'm done. I'm finished with that section now. Because what they would find the next day is that then they'd really struggle to get started again because they didn't know what was coming next. So I always, whenever I finish, whenever I get to the point that I'm like, right, I'm getting tired now, I'm going to stop for the night, I will always make sure that I write some bullet points down of what I need to write next. Like, how does the scene finish? How does the conversation finish? What comes next? If I have got to the end of the scene, what's the next scene that I need to write? So that basically as soon as I sit down in front of my computer the next evening, I'm like, okay, yeah, I know that that's what I need to do next. And so I get started again. And that's been really helpful. And I think that's a really good indication of actually I do need a lot of plotting. I need a lot of prompting. I need to go back to that non-fiction mentality of knowing everything, of having everything ready, of having all the material there and just sitting down and bashing out all of the words. So yeah, definitely the plotting has been a big thing for me. And I was always that person who was like, oh, I never plot, I just sit down and write it. And I think I was a bit arrogant about that as well. I think I was like, oh no, because it just all comes out of my brain and it all just works and this, that and the other. But it wasn't working. And I know that there's a big thing about some writers don't plot. They never plot anything. They can just sit down and they can keep it all in their mind and they can just throw it all out there. And I know some writers plot to the nth degree. They'll have like post-it notes and loads of different stuff and have a storyboard, and I don't quite go that far at the moment. I might do later on, but at the moment I definitely have like kind of scene plots. Okay, so what happens in this scene, what happens here, and then I have an overarching story plot. For example, I know how I want this story to end. I know what happens in the story. It's just plotting it out to get me to that point as well. one thing that I have done is I've set myself a daily target. Now, I've tried to keep this quite realistic. I've set myself 2,000 words a day as a target, bearing in mind that I am only writing for 2 to 3 hours a night. But the one thing I am doing is I'm not holding myself to that target religiously, because I think it's so easy to get caught up in the numbers and start thinking, oh God, well, I've only written 1,700 words today. Well, actually, that's still 1,700 words of the manuscript, and I should be really proud of that, rather than berating myself that I haven't managed to write the final 300 words that I was supposed to do that day. So it's just a general guide, I suppose, of kind of helping me. And I have a Excel spreadsheet that is all kind of set up where if I put in my word count for each day, and it tells me what percentage I am towards a goal. And it's just very kind of basic. Like I say, some days I don't get that lovely green tick to say that I've got my goal, but I'm really trying not to get caught up in the word count. And I think that's been really beneficial. The other thing, and I slightly mentioned it earlier, is that I picked the right time of year to actually really invest in my writing. So I knew that August was going to be a little bit quieter, and in terms of like life as well as work. And so I knew there'd be quite a lot of time spent at home and during the day and in an evening for me to be able to kind of work. And so that's why I think it's also been a success this summer. Now, NaNoWriMo, unfortunately for me, November is a really busy month. I have birthdays. Usually things are winding up for Christmas. We're seeing people. We may nip on holiday to go and see Tom's parents. And so November ends up being not a very convenient month for me to do a massive writing challenge. And so that's why I've always kind of thought, oh, well, maybe I could do a NaNoWriMo in April, which I think there is like a NaNoWriMo challenge or something that happens in like April, May time. But I was really busy in April. I was winding up with freelance work, and so that didn't work either. Whereas I was like, even in early June, July, I was like, right, August. I can see August on the horizon. It's going to be quite quiet. That's when I'm going to really invest some time in my book. So I do need to really kind of continue that, because I know that from kind of like October, November time, work is going to get very busy again. So I really need to invest September and October as much time as I can to try and get this novel draft finished. And another thing that I did, which has been so helpful and comforting and useful, is that I got myself a writing buddy. Now, you've met my friend Kayla before if you've watched my persuasion reaction video. We did I suppose it was a bit like a video podcast, really. She and I talked about persuasion, about the adaptation, about what we thought about it. And we both love period dramas, we both love historical novels, we're both writers. She's also writing her first novel at the moment. And so it's been really lovely to have somebody in exactly the same position as me to chat to each other about our projects, to be able to do little Pomodoro sessions together. We have probably almost a daily check-in, especially throughout August where we've checked in almost regularly throughout the day to be like, how are you doing? Have you done any writing yet? Not to put pressure on each other, and certainly not to be competitive, just to kind of check in. And it's been really funny because actually throughout the month we've had the same kind of peaks and flows in our energy levels, in our creativity, in our, oh my God, I don't think I can do this moments. And so we've been able to kind of support each other through that, and it's been really, really beneficial. And on that note, Kayla and I would love to start a podcast about writing. We have been talking about creating this podcast for over 12 months now, and we need to just really sit down and actually do it. But it would be a podcast about the experience of writing your first fiction novel. So we have this idea that the very beginning of it, kind of the first small section, would be a catch-up where we would talk about our own projects, what we're working on, what we struggled with that week, and talk very much about us, a bit chatty. And then the second half of it would be talking about a specific topic, having guests on to talk about how to write, how to get an agent, how to do all these different things. And then at the point that we finish our novels and we start trying to get them published, then it would pivot to how did we become published and going through that journey. And it's kind of a weekly podcast that would be able to kind of bring people along that journey of creating a novel together. So if that's something that you are interested in, do let me know in the description, let me know in the comments section if that's something that you would listen to, because I think we both need a little bit of a kick in our backsides to get it done and to get started and start recording it, because I do think it would be really fun to do, and I hope they would be really interesting for people as well to see that kind of process as we go. So overall, I would say if you know somebody, if you've got a buddy who's also writing a novel, or, you know, maybe see if you can find somebody online, you know, find an Instagram buddy or a TikTok somebody and say, you know, do you fancy becoming a writing buddy? And I would really highly encourage it, because it really does help with things like motivation. Just knowing that when you're having a moment when you're thinking, this is crap, why am I writing this? It's absolutely terrible. You can go to your buddy and say, that's how I'm feeling. And 9 times out of 10, they're probably going to write you back and go, oh my God, I've been having exactly the same feelings today. And then both of you have comforted each other. You know, it's not just you. It's not your writing, it's crap. It's just that this is what happens when you're in the middle of creating something. You have these moments of self-doubt. So I highly recommend it. So on that note, I have patrons, and I'm so excited and so thankful that people are choosing to support the work that I do and to support my writing and my content creation. So thank you very, very much. My patrons are currently flashing up on screen. And yeah, if you want to consider becoming a patron and supporting me, then the link to my Patreon is in my description box. So thank you very much for considering that. Absolutely no worries. If you're not in a position to be able to support financially, I totally understand it. And just hitting the subscribe button, hitting the like button even, is a huge thing. So thank you very much. If you're able to do any of those things, I will really, really appreciate it. And thank you to everybody who does all of that stuff, who is subscribed, who is a patron, who hits the like button, all of that good stuff. And everybody who leaves me the lovely comments. I read them all, try to respond to as many as I possibly can. And yeah, thank you all very much. I hope that this has been helpful. It's certainly getting a little bit more kind of focused on my writing has been so helpful for me this month, and I'm really excited to see how many words I can get written in September. Not going to do these kind of videos every month. This was just a very specific one about how I've started to get more strategic about novel writing, but I will probably share and upload actually an update about my novel writing, like word numbers, where I'm up to with stuff. That stuff will more likely be on my Instagram and my TikTok. So if you want to follow me, I am Charlotte Furness Writer on Instagram and Charlotte Furness Author on TikTok. So yeah, if you want to follow me on either of those, please do. And I'm going to shut up now. I'm going to go and get on with my plotting and get ready to do the next part of the book. So yes, I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you very, very much. And if you've stuck around this far and watched to the end of the video, what should we put in? Put an avocado. Have we got an avocado emoji? Either put an avocado or write avocado in the comments section, and I will know who's watched this far. All right, take care and have a lovely week, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.